I'm sending this here because I don't know who else would put it up without turning it into a joke or forwarding it to someone official who will just call it a misunderstanding. I'm not trying to get famous. I'm trying to get this written down somewhere outside my phone because the things that keep helpfully tracking us also keep rewriting what happened. This started on a charter out of Alaska, not a big airline, a small outfit that runs a turboprop from a gravel strip out to a larger town with a real airport. We were a group, not tourists exactly, more like a work trip that got stuck on the wrong side of weather. One of us is diabetic and one has a heart issue. We had meds for a little while, not forever. The plan was simple: charter out, connect to commercial, and be home the same day. We had a satellite messenger because cell service out there is basically a rumor. The device is one of those that pairs to a phone and lets you send canned "I'm okay" messages, plus an SOS button. Our families back home were expecting check-ins when we landed and when we got to the next airport. We'd used it before, and it's been reliable. At the strip, the pilot weighed bags and asked names. He had a clipboard, handwritten manifest, and the kind of casual tone that says he's done this 1,000 times. He repeated our names back to us. I remember that because later I replayed it over and over. The plane was small enough that you can see everything from your seat if you lean forward. 2 rows on each side, narrow aisle, cargo behind the last row with a net. We loaded ourselves and our gear. The pilot shut the door from inside. It was noisy and smelled like fuel and wet jackets. We were airborne for a while when the first odd thing happened. The satellite app on my phone chimed as if I'd sent something. I looked down and saw a check-in sent confirmation. I didn't touch it. I assumed I bumped the screen. I told myself that and put the phone away. A little later it chimed again. Same wording, same canned message. We were fine, we were moving, we'd check in later. That message went to my wife and to my brother because those were the only 2 recipients saved. The app showed them delivered. I felt my stomach drop because the device was in my pack between my feet, and my phone was in airplane mode. I hadn't opened the app since the last time. I leaned down and unzipped the pack to make sure the messenger wasn't somehow pressed. The physical unit has a couple buttons and a protected cover over SOS. Everything was intact. No stuck button, no cracked casing. I zipped it up and told myself the app was glitching. Then the noise came from behind us from the cargo area. Not a bang like shifting luggage, more like a sharp scrape followed by a low grunt that didn't match any of us. Everybody turned their heads in that stiff way you do in a tight seat. The pilot must have heard it too because he called back, asked if someone's gear shifted. Nobody answered right away. The guy across the aisle from me said it might be the net. The pilot told him not to get up unless necessary. But then a hand came up from behind the last row and grabbed the seat back. It was pale and dirty, fingernails torn. A face rose up under the cargo net like someone had been folded there. Adult male, beard, eyes wide, hair matted. He wasn't wearing a jacket, just a sweatshirt. He looked freezing and panicked. He tried to climb forward into the aisle. The pilot shouted for everyone to stay seated. The stowaway, there's no other word for it, kept saying he needed to get out, that he couldn't breathe, that he was supposed to be on this flight. His voice was hoarse like he'd been holding it in. In a small plane, you don't have space for a situation like that. The pilot stood up as much as he could and reached back, telling him to sit down, to calm down, to not touch anything. The man grabbed at the pilot's arm, and the pilot yanked away and nearly lost his balance. What happened next wasn't dramatic in a movie way. It was a cramped struggle between seats. The man lunged, got a hand on the pilot's shoulder, and the pilot shoved him back. Someone behind me tried to help by pushing the man toward the cargo area. The man's head hit the edge of the overhead panel or the seat frame. There was a dull impact sound, and then he went slack. The pilot yelled for everybody to sit down and keep hands off controls. The man slid down into the gap behind the last row. He didn't get back up. We were all breathing hard like we'd been running. The pilot kept flying. Nobody moved for a while. One of my coworkers whispered, "Is he dead?" No one answered. When the pilot finally stabilized and could spare attention, he told us he was going to land as soon as he could. But we were over a lot of nothing, and the weather ahead was worse. He asked if anyone had medical training. We had none. He told the nearest passenger to check for breathing without unbuckling fully. That passenger leaned back awkwardly and touched the man's neck. He shook his head. We didn't see blood. I'm stating that because I don't want anyone thinking this is a gruesome story. It wasn't. It was quiet and wrong. The pilot made a call over the radio. I didn't catch all of it through the headset noise, but I heard him say there was an unmanifested individual and that the person was unresponsive. He asked for instructions. We landed at a small airport that felt closed even though the lights were on. A couple people met us, not a crowd. They talked to the pilot first, then they came onto the plane and looked into the cargo area. They didn't do a long exam. They pulled the man out like a heavy bag and carried him off. We were told to wait in a side office, not the main area. It wasn't an interrogation room, just a cramped office with a desk, a faded calendar, and a space heater. They took our names and statements. The pilot looked wrecked, but he kept saying the same thing. There was no extra passenger on his manifest. Here's where the record problem started. One of the airport people read our names from a printed list and asked us to confirm we were the only people on board. We all said no. There was another man. You just carried him out. The airport guy looked at the list again and said, "No, there wasn't." Not like arguing, more like stating a fact he thought we didn't understand. I asked to see the manifest. He showed me a sheet with our names and the pilot's name, and that was it. I said the pilot asked names at the strip, and there was no way that man got on after. The airport guy said the company would handle it and to focus on getting home. I pulled out my phone and opened the satellite app to show the check-ins that went out while we were in the air, thinking it would at least prove the timeline. The app's log showed the 2 "I'm okay" messages, but the timestamps were off, like they were sent at times we were still on the ground. I know that sounds like a normal sync issue, but the weird part was the map pins. They were placed not along our route, but on the airport where we had just landed, as if we'd never left. While we sat in that office, my wife texted through the satellite device's return channel asking why I was spamming check-ins and why the map said we were stationary. I hadn't received that message as a normal text. It came through the app as if she'd replied to the canned message. The check-in itself looked normal to her, reassuring, casual. She told me later it used my usual wording, even though I didn't type anything. The airport staff told us the commercial connection was canceled due to weather. They put us in a small motel near the airport, the kind with outdoor doors and thin curtains. We were to fly out the next day if weather improved. That night, another check-in went out. I was asleep. The app chirped on the nightstand, bright screen, and the message sent itself. All good. Delayed but safe. I grabbed the phone and tried to stop it. Too late. Delivered. I turned the satellite device off, fully, holding the power button until it shut down. I took the batteries out. I put it in the motel bathroom, wrapped in a towel like that would do anything. An hour later, my wife replied asking why I was sending updates when I'd said I'd call if I could. She attached a screenshot. It showed the device's name, my contact, and the message, exactly like a normal send. In the morning, we went back to the airport office to ask about the stowaway. We didn't ask for details. We just asked whether there would be a report, whether we needed to do anything else. The person behind the desk, a different person than last night, looked confused and asked what we were talking about. We said there was a man on our flight who died. She said, no, you were the only passengers. Same tone as the other guy. The pilot wasn't there. The charter company's phone number went to voicemail. We asked for the tail number to reference the flight. The desk person said there was no record of a flight matching our description, only a charter that landed with our group as planned and no incident. We weren't crazy. All of us remembered. One of the women in our group had a bruise on her forearm from trying to shove the man back. Another guy had a torn sleeve. Physical stuff. Real. The next day the weather did not improve. The day after that didn't either. We were effectively stuck in this little airport town, burning money, watching the meds run down. The diabetic member of our group started rationing insulin. The heart meds were next. We were trying to figure out whether to drive out, but the roads were long and not the kind you take lightly in winter. Meanwhile, the check-ins kept going out. Once in the morning, once late afternoon, and once at night. Always reassuring, always short, always in my voice. Sometimes it used phrases I actually say. Sometimes it used phrases I wouldn't. My brother started calling me through the app, asking if I needed cash or if something was wrong. I tried to answer, but my outgoing messages failed. The app would spin and then say unable to send. Then, minutes later, another check-in would go out on its own. It got worse when the device started sending location pins that didn't match where we were. It placed us back at the original gravel strip we'd left, then halfway along the route, then at the airport town again, as if it was trying to tell a coherent story without acknowledging anything outside the official route. I tried to make a manual record. I wrote times down on paper. I took screenshots. Later, those screenshots were gone or replaced by blank gray tiles where the app should have been. I know what I saw. The paper notes remained, but even those started to feel useless because they were just my handwriting against a system that kept telling everyone we were fine. One afternoon, trying to break the pattern, we left the satellite device in the motel office safe and drove out of town to a parking pull-off with no buildings around. We stayed there until dark. I watched my phone. At the usual time, the app still sent the check-in. The location pin placed us at the motel. That's when it hit me that this wasn't an accidental button press problem. There was a schedule. Morning, late afternoon, night. Same cadence, like a system-generated status report. The scariest part is what it did to our ability to get help. Everyone back home thought we were calm and in control because the check-ins sounded that way. When I tried to call anyone using the device, it failed. When I tried to send a plain message describing the stowaway and that we needed to get out, it failed. But the all good messages went out no problem. We considered hitting SOS. Nobody wanted to unless it was life or death, because that's how you get billed and how you get yelled at. But the med situation was turning into life or death slowly. Also, I didn't trust SOS to be real anymore. I didn't trust it not to send false alarm sorry on my behalf. On the third night at the motel, I woke up to the sound of the app chirping again. The message it sent was different. It said, "Minor issue resolved." I never use that phrase. My wife replied immediately, "What minor issue?" I typed back, "Do not trust the check-ins." It failed to send. Then another automatic check-in went out that said, "Everything is normal." I went into the bathroom and threw up from stress. When I came out, one of my coworkers was sitting on the edge of the bed staring at his own phone. He said his family got the same kind of check-ins from his device too, even though his device was powered off. So it wasn't just mine. Whatever was happening, it was attached to the group, or the flight, or the record of us. The next morning, we finally got a rental car and decided to drive as far as we could toward a bigger town with a hospital and reliable service. We told the motel clerk we were leaving. The clerk said, "You already checked out." She showed us a printed receipt with our names and a checkout time that hadn't happened yet. On the road, the check-ins continued. The pins placed us at the airport town we'd left. Then they placed us at the motel. Then they placed us at the original strip. It was like the system was trying to keep us inside a set of acceptable points. We stopped at a gas station. I went inside and asked the cashier if the charter company name meant anything. He shrugged. I asked if there had been an incident at the airport a few days ago with a body. He said, nope, like it was a dumb question. I don't know what happened to the stowaway after they carried him off the plane. I don't know where the pilot is. I don't know why the records show a clean charter with no extra person, no diversion, no delay, nothing. I just know that every time I try to put the missing person into the official story, the systems around us smooth it out. As I'm writing this, we are back in a different motel, farther down the road, with the diabetic member of our group lying on the bed, trying to conserve energy. The satellite device is in pieces in the sink, batteries out, antenna snapped. The phone app still shows a green status light and a scheduled check-in time. It says the next message will send automatically. If you post this, please keep the title the way I wrote it. If anyone reads it who has access to airline manifests, charter logs, satellite messenger backends, whatever, and they see a gap that looks like a person erased, don't try to fix it quietly, because the whole point of the check-ins is to make everyone stop asking. My wife just texted through the app again. Glad you're safe. She attached the latest auto check-in. It says arrived, all set. We have not arrived anywhere.